20 minutes. That's all Seth Newman had before the presentation that could save everything: his job, his daughter's future, the roof over their heads. 3 years of struggling as a single father. 3 years of being invisible in the corporate machine. And finally, one chance to prove his worth to the executives at Summit Ridge headquarters. Then he saw her, the silver Mercedes wrapped around the concrete barrier, metal twisted like paper, smoke pouring from the engine. Through the shattered window, a woman slumped over the steering wheel, blood streaming down her face. Seth's hand hovered over his phone call, 911, and keep driving, make the meeting, save his career. But her head moved slightly, and he knew she didn't have 20 minutes. She didn't even have 5. What Seth couldn't know, as he pulled over, was that the dying woman he was about to save would turn out to be the last person he'd ever expect, and that this single decision would cost him everything before giving him something far more valuable than he'd ever imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Seth Newman's shirt collar felt like a noose. 20 minutes, until the presentation that would determine whether he kept his job at Thornfield Analytics or joined the ranks of the unemployed for the 4th time in 3 years. His daughter Zoe's face flashed through his mind. 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, currently at the neighbor's apartment watching morning cartoons, completely unaware that her father was one bad meeting away from losing everything. The highway stretched ahead, unusually clear for a Tuesday morning. Seth pressed the accelerator, rehearsing his pitch for the 100th time. The regional expansion model shows a 32% increase in customer retention. His voice sounded hollow, even to himself. 3 months of 70-hour weeks, compressed into a 15-minute presentation for executives who barely knew his name. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Another reminder from his boss, Gerald Hoffman. "Don't be late. The VP flies out at 10. This is your shot." Seth's hands tightened on the wheel. His shot, as if 3 years of arriving early, staying late, and doing the work of 2 people while getting paid for one hadn't already been his shot. But that's how it worked when you were expendable, when every employer saw single father on your resume and heard unreliable. The exit for Summit Ridge appeared ahead, 8 minutes away. Plenty of time. Seth allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today someone would finally see him as more than just another struggling employee, barely keeping his head above water. Then he saw it. The silver Mercedes had smashed into the concrete barrier with such force that the front end had accordion folded back on itself. Steam hissed from the destroyed engine. The driver's side door hung open at an unnatural angle. Morning commuters slowed, rubbernecked, then accelerated past. Everyone had somewhere to be. Something more important than stopping. Seth's foot moved toward the brake, hesitated, then pressed down hard. The car behind him honked angrily as he pulled onto the shoulder. Through the shattered windshield, he could see her, a woman in a business suit, slumped over the deflating airbag. Blood ran down her face from a gash above her eyebrow, dripping onto the white fabric of her blouse, turning it crimson. Her head lolled to the side as Seth approached, revealing more blood. So much blood. "Ma'am?" Seth's voice came out steadier than he felt. "Can you hear me?" No response. He could see her chest rising and falling shallow, irregular breaths. Still alive, but for how long? Seth pulled out his phone with shaking hands. 911 dispatcher, calm and professional. "What's your emergency?" "Car accident on Highway 47, northbound, half-mile before the Summit Ridge exit. Single vehicle, driver unconscious, significant head trauma, bleeding heavily. She needs an ambulance now. Units are dispatched. Stay on the line. Are you trained in first aid?" "No, but Seth looked at the woman again. More blood pooled on the leather seat. "She's bleeding a lot. I don't think she has time to wait." "Sir, don't move her. Spinal injuries." But Seth was already moving. Years of watching medical dramas didn't make him a doctor, but he knew enough to recognize that bleeding out was a more immediate threat than a potential spinal injury. He reached through the broken window, carefully supporting her head, and felt for a pulse, weak but present. The gash above her eyebrow was deep, blood flowing freely. Seth yanked off his tie, the one he'd ironed carefully this morning, the one that was supposed to help him look professional and competent, and pressed it against the wound. The woman's eyes fluttered but didn't open. "Stay with me," Seth said, his other hand fumbling for his phone to check the time. 8:47. The presentation started at 9. Summit Ridge was 8 minutes away in normal traffic, but he'd have to leave now, this second, to make it. His phone rang. Hoffman's name flashing like an accusation. Seth stared at the screen, then at the woman whose life was literally in his hands. His thumb hovered over the answer button. Behind him, traffic continued to flow, hundreds of people passing by, all with their own important meetings and deadlines, all choosing to keep driving. The tie was already soaked through with blood. Seth grabbed his jacket from where he'd thrown it in the passenger seat and pressed that against the wound too. "Come on," he muttered. "Where's the ambulance?" His phone stopped ringing, started again immediately. Hoffman, persistent as always. The woman's eyes opened, unfocused and glazed. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. Her hand moved slightly, fingers grasping at nothing. "Don't try to talk," Seth said, his voice cracking. "Help is coming. You're going to be okay." Was she? Blood had soaked through his jacket now. How much blood could a person lose before it was too late? In the distance, Seth heard sirens. 2 minutes away, maybe 3. The presentation would be starting in 13 minutes. Even if he left right now, abandoned this woman to wait alone, he'd be at least 5 minutes late. Walking in after the VP had already started would be worse than not showing up at all. The woman's eyes focused on him for just a moment, clear and desperate and so obviously terrified. Then they started to drift closed again. "No. No. No," Seth said, louder now. "Stay awake. Look at me. What's your name?" Her lips moved. Seth leaned closer, straining to hear. "Sabrina," she whispered. "My name is Sabrina." "Okay, Sabrina. I'm Seth. You're going to be fine. The ambulance is almost here." She tried to nod, winced with pain. "Thank you for stopping." The words hit Seth like a physical blow. "Thank you for stopping." As if it was remarkable. As if everyone else hadn't just driven past a woman bleeding to death because they had somewhere more important to be. Seth's phone rang again. This time, it was a text from Hoffman. "Where are you? VP is asking about the presentation." The sirens grew louder. Seth could see the ambulance now, weaving through traffic, 30 seconds away. He looked at his phone, at the time 8:51, and at the blood covering his hands, his shirt, his jacket, at Sabrina, whose eyes were closing again despite his efforts to keep her talking. The choice had already been made. Seth realized he'd made it the moment he pressed the brake instead of the gas. Some decisions you made with your head, weighing pros and cons. Others you made with something deeper. Some part of yourself that knew what you'd be able to live with. He could live with losing his job. He couldn't live with driving past. The paramedics took over with practiced efficiency. Seth stepped back, watching them work, checking vitals, applying pressure, preparing the gurney. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, looked at him. "You likely saved her life. That wound would have bled out in another few minutes." Seth nodded numbly. His phone buzzed continuously in his pocket. He didn't need to check it to know what the messages said. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. Seth stood on the shoulder of the highway, covered in blood that wasn't his, watching his career disappear along with it. His phone rang. Not Hoffman this time. Zoe's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. "Seth? Zoe's asking when you'll pick her up. I have to leave for work soon." Seth looked at his watch. 8:56. In 4 minutes, his entire professional future would implode. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He got back in his car and drove away from Summit Ridge, away from the presentation, away from his one shot. The blood on his hands was already starting to dry. Seth made it 3 blocks before his phone rang again. Hoffman's name on the screen felt like a death sentence. He pulled over into a grocery store parking lot and answered. "Where the hell are you, Newman?" No greeting, no opening for explanation. Just fury wrapped in corporate civility. Seth's throat felt tight. There was an accident on Highway 47. A woman was bleeding out from a head injury. I stopped to help until the paramedics arrived. Silence stretched between them, the kind that felt like falling. Then Hoffman laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "An accident? That's what you're going with? You're going with that?" "I'm not going with anything. It's what happened." Seth heard his own voice rising. "She would have died, Gerald. Another few minutes, and she would have bled to death. I don't care if the president himself was dying on the side of the road." Hoffman snapped. "You had one job today, Seth. One job. Do you have any idea what I went through to get you in front of the VP? 3 months of me covering for you. Making excuses. Telling them you were worth the investment. Despite your track record." Track record? Seth felt something cold settle in his chest. "I've worked 70-hour weeks for 3 years. I've never missed a deadline. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. You've been late 17 times in the past 6 months. You left early 4 times last month alone. You missed the quarterly review because of some issue with your daughter's school. She had pneumonia, Gerald. She was in the hospital. And I sympathized, Seth. I really did. But this company doesn't run on sympathy. The VP wanted to know about the regional expansion model. Your model. The one you've been working on for 3 months. And where were you? Playing hero on the highway." Seth closed his eyes, seeing Sabrina's blood-soaked face. "She would have died. People die every day," Hoffman said, his voice going cold. "Your job died today. Security will box up your desk. Don't bother coming in." The line went dead before Seth could respond. He sat there in the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the silence where his career used to be. 3 years of early mornings and late nights. 3 years of proving himself, erased in a 30-second conversation. A knock on his window made him jump. A security guard stood there, looking concerned. "You okay, buddy? You've been sitting here for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, Seth looked at the clock. 9:14. He was supposed to pick up Zoe. He started the engine with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Mrs. Patterson answered her door before he could knock, her round face creasing with worry. "Seth, what happened? You look like—" She stopped, taking in his blood-stained shirt. "Oh my God. Are you hurt?" "It's not my blood," Seth said quickly. "There was an accident. I helped until the ambulance came." He couldn't bring himself to say the rest yet. Couldn't say the words, "I got fired," out loud. Zoe appeared behind Mrs. Patterson, her backpack already on. "Daddy," Mrs. Patterson made pancakes. Then she saw his shirt, and her smile faltered. "Why are you all messy?" Seth crouched down to her level, trying to smile. "I helped someone who was hurt, sweetheart. But I'm fine. Are you ready to go?" Mrs. Patterson touched his arm. "Seth, do you want to talk about it? I can watch Zoe for a while longer if you need to." "I'm fine," Seth said, too quickly. "Thank you for watching her. Come on, Zoe." In the car, Zoe chattered about her morning, the pancakes, the cartoons, how Mrs. Patterson's cat had knocked over a plant. Seth made appropriate sounds of interest, but his mind was elsewhere. Calculating. Recalculating. His savings account had $2,400. Rent was $1,650, due in 8 days. Zoe's after-school program was $400 a month. Food, utilities, her art classes she loved so much. He had maybe 6 weeks before they were homeless. Less if Zoe got sick again, like she had last winter. when her asthma had landed them in the emergency room twice. "Daddy, you're not listening." Seth blinked, focused on his daughter in the rearview mirror. "Sorry, baby. What did you say?" "I said Mrs. Patterson asked if you got the big job thing today. Did you?" Seth's hands tightened on the wheel. "Not exactly." "Oh." Zoe was quiet for a moment. "That's okay. You'll get the next one." The simple faith in her voice nearly broke him. At home, Seth changed into clean clothes while Zoe settled in front of her coloring books. He stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. 41 years old, looking older. His hair had gone gray at the temples last year. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before Sarah left. Sarah, who'd walked out 2 years ago with a note that said, "I can't do this anymore," and no forwarding address. Who'd signed away custody without a fight, like being Zoe's mother had been a job she was relieved to quit. Seth's phone buzzed. An email from HR at Thornfield, official and cold. "Your employment has been terminated effective immediately. Final paycheck and information regarding Cobra Health Insurance continuation will be mailed." Cobra, the insurance that would cost more per month than his rent had been at his last apartment. The insurance he couldn't afford without a job. He opened his laptop at the kitchen table and pulled up job search sites, the same sites he'd haunted during every gap between jobs. Updated his resume, started scanning listings, data analyst positions, project manager roles, anything that matched his skills. 3 hours later, he'd applied to 22 positions. Most showed 847 applicants, or position filled, or application under review, which everyone knew meant we're never looking at this. His phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Seth almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Seth Newman?" A woman's voice, professional and polished. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Bailey Warren. I'm with Warren and Associates Legal Group." "Mr. Newman, I'm trying to locate the individual who provided assistance at an accident scene on Highway 47 this morning. Multiple witnesses and traffic camera footage indicate you may have been involved." Seth's stomach tightened. "Is Sabrina okay? The woman from the accident?" There was a brief pause. "Miss Cole is in stable condition, thanks to the immediate first aid she received." "Mr. Newman, she and her family would very much like to speak with you to express their gratitude." "That's not necessary," Seth said quickly. "I'm just glad she's all right." "Even so, they're quite insistent." "Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning? I can send you the address for our offices." Seth looked around his apartment at Zoe's art supplies scattered on the table, at the overdue notices he'd been ignoring, at his laptop still open to job listings. Meeting with lawyers from a woman who could afford firms like Warren and Associates felt like walking into another world, a world where he didn't belong. But then he thought about the medical bills that would be coming, about the resume he'd just updated, about Zoe asking if he got the job. "What time?" he heard himself ask. "Would 10 o'clock work?" "I'll be there." After he hung up, Seth sat at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. He'd lost his job saving a stranger's life. Now that stranger wanted to thank him. He pulled up a search engine and typed in Sabrina Cole. The results made his stomach drop. Sabrina Cole, founder and CEO of Meridian Enterprises, net worth estimated at $1.2 billion. One of the 50 most powerful women in business. Featured in Forbes, Fortune, Business Insider. The woman he'd saved was a billionaire. And until this morning, he'd been cleaning up conference rooms in the same building where she probably made decisions worth millions. Seth closed the laptop and dropped his head into his hands. The coffee shop where Seth filled out job applications smelled like burnt espresso and broken dreams. He'd been here for 4 hours, watching his laptop battery drain while opportunity after opportunity slipped through his fingers. Position filled. Thank you for your interest. We've moved forward with other candidates. Your qualifications don't match our current needs. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Patterson. Zoe's asking about dinner. Should I feed her here? Seth checked the time. 6:47 p.m. He'd told Zoe he'd pick her up at 6. I'm so sorry, I'm on my way now. He packed up his laptop, left a $1 tip he couldn't afford, and walked out into an evening that felt darker than it should. The October air had turned cold, sharp enough to cut through his jacket. Seth walked fast, trying to outpace the thoughts that had been circling all day. 8 years ago, he'd had a plan, business degree from State University, entry-level analyst position, work his way up. Then Sarah had gotten pregnant, and the plan had accelerated marriage, apartment, preparing for fatherhood with the kind of naive optimism people had before they understood how expensive life actually was. Zoe had been born 6 weeks early, spent 2 weeks in the NICU with underdeveloped lungs. The bills had started then and never really stopped. Asthma medications, nebulizer treatments, emergency room visits every time she caught a cold that turned into something worse. Then Sarah had left, and Seth had discovered that doing it alone meant choosing between being a good father and being a good employee. You couldn't do both, not when your daughter's school called at 2 p.m. because she was having an asthma attack, not when daycare cost more than rent, not when every employer saw your situation and calculated your value accordingly. Mrs. Patterson met him at the door, Zoe already in her coat. I fed her some chicken nuggets. I hope that's okay. That's perfect. Thank you. Seth's throat felt tight. I'm sorry I'm late. I was job hunting. Mrs. Patterson finished. Her eyes were kind but tired. She'd been helping watch Zoe for 2 years, refusing payment beyond the occasional grocery run. Seth, I wanted to talk to you about that. Seth's stomach dropped. If it's too much, I understand. I can look into after-school programs or... It's not that. Mrs. Patterson glanced back at Zoe, who was absorbed in a cartoon. She lowered her voice. My daughter in Florida has been asking me to move down there, be closer to the grandkids. I've been putting it off, but Seth, I'm 73. I can't keep doing this forever. The world tilted slightly. When? End of the month, maybe sooner. I'm so sorry. I know the timing is terrible. Terrible didn't begin to cover it. Mrs. Patterson charged nothing. The cheapest after-school program Seth had found was $400 a month, and most had wait lists. I understand, he said, because what else could he say? Thank you for everything you've done. In the car, Zoe was quiet. Too quiet. Seth glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You okay, sweetheart? Mrs. Patterson is moving away. I know. But we'll figure it out. Like we figured out when Mom left? The question hit like a fist. Seth pulled over, turned to face his daughter. Zoe, listen to me. Mom leaving had nothing to do with you. And Mrs. Patterson isn't leaving because of you either. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't have anything to do with kids. But everything changes, Zoe said, her voice small. We had to move from the nice apartment. You had to change jobs again. Mom left. Now Mrs. Patterson is leaving. What if you have to go away too? Seth unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed into the back seat, pulling his daughter into a hug. I am never leaving you. Never. Do you understand? Whatever happens, we're together. Promise? I promise. But as he held her, Seth wondered how long he could keep that promise. How many more job losses before they ended up in a shelter? How many more pieces could break before there was nothing left to hold together? At home, Seth made Zoe's favorite dinner mac and cheese from a box with cut-up hot dogs mixed in. While she ate, he opened his laptop again and pulled up his banking app. Checking. $2,400. He opened a notepad and started writing. Rent, $1,650. Due, in 7 days. Utilities, $180. Phone, $75. Car. Insurance, $130. Zoe's asthma medications, $240. Insurance, lapsed with job. After-school care, $400. Starting next month when Mrs. Patterson leaves. Food, $300 minimum. Total monthly, $2,975. He had enough for rent this month. That would leave $750 for everything else. The medications alone would take a third of that. He could skip the car insurance payment, risk it for a month, cut the phone down to bare minimum. But the after-school care, he couldn't leave an 8-year-old alone after school. And if he didn't have after-school care, he couldn't take a job. Seth closed the laptop and dropped his head into his hands. The math didn't work. It hadn't worked for 3 years, and he'd been juggling, borrowing from one month to pay for the next, always one crisis away from complete collapse. "Daddy?" Zoe stood in the doorway to the kitchen, her empty bowl in hand. "Why are you crying?" He hadn't realized he was. Seth wiped at his eyes quickly. "I'm fine, baby. Just tired." "Is it because you lost your job?" He looked at her, this small person who saw everything. "How did you know?" "You always cry a little when you lose a job." "It's okay. You'll find another one." The simple faith in her voice broke something in him. Seth pulled her close, holding on like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "Yeah," he managed. "I will." That night, after Zoe was asleep, Seth's laptop pinged with a new email. The sender was listed as Warren and Associates Legal Group. "Mr. Newman, confirming our appointment tomorrow at 10 a.m. Please find attached directions to our offices on the 42nd floor of Meridian Tower downtown. Looking forward to meeting you, Bailey Warren, Senior Partner." Seth clicked the attachment. Meridian Tower. He knew the building, 60 stories of glass and steel. The kind of place where the lobby probably cost more than his entire apartment complex. He pulled up Google and searched Meridian Tower, just out of curiosity. The building wasn't just impressive, it was the headquarters of Meridian Enterprises. Sabrina Cole's company, the woman he'd saved, owned the entire building. Seth looked around his apartment. One bedroom that he'd converted into 2 with a curtain divider. Zoe's side had walls covered in her artwork drawings of families and houses and sons with smiley faces. His side had a mattress on the floor and a plastic bin of clothes. Tomorrow, he'd walk into a building worth hundreds of millions to meet with lawyers representing a billionaire. He'd shake their hands with his Goodwill suit jacket and his scuffed shoes, and accept their thanks like he was someone who belonged in that world. The absurdity of it made him laugh, a sound without much humor. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. "This is Sabrina Cole. I wanted to reach out personally before tomorrow. Mr. Newman, you saved my life. I don't have adequate words to express what that means, but I'm going to try tomorrow. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for seeing me." Seth stared at the message for a long time. She'd texted him directly, not through her lawyer, not through an assistant. She'd found his number and thanked him herself. He typed a response, deleted it, typed again. "I'm glad you're okay. That's all that matters." 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing. They disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, a response came through. "It's not all that matters. See you tomorrow." Seth set his phone down and looked at the bills spread across his table, at his daughter's artwork on the walls, at the life he'd built from nothing and was watching crumble despite his best efforts. Tomorrow he'd meet Sabrina Cole and accept her thanks. Then he'd come home and figure out how to make $750 stretch across a month's worth of survival. But tonight, for just a moment, he let himself imagine what it might feel like to not be drowning. To have someone see him as more than just another struggling single father barely holding on. The fantasy lasted about 30 seconds before reality reasserted itself. Seth closed his laptop and went to bed, knowing sleep wouldn't come easy. Seth woke at 4 a.m. to the sound of Zoe coughing. Not the normal morning cough, but the wet, rattling kind that meant her asthma was flaring up again. He was at her bedside before he was fully awake, hand on her forehead. Warm, not quite fever hot, but getting there. "I'm okay, Daddy," she wheezed, but her breathing was labored, each inhale a visible effort. Seth grabbed the nebulizer from the bathroom, the machine they'd bought used from a medical supply store because insurance had refused to cover it. He set it up, measured out the albuterol solution with hands that knew the routine too well. Zoe sat up, took the mask without complaint, and breathed in the medicated mist, while Seth rubbed her back in slow circles. 20 minutes later, her breathing had eased, but Seth knew this pattern. The morning attack meant there'd be another one by afternoon, maybe worse. She needed the preventive inhaler, the one that cost $240 a month. The one he hadn't refilled because he'd been waiting for insurance to kick in at his new job. The job he no longer had. "Can I stay home today?" Zoe asked, her voice small. Seth wanted to say yes. Wanted to wrap her in blankets and keep her safe. But staying home meant missing school, which meant falling behind, which meant parent-teacher conferences where he'd have to explain why his daughter was struggling. "Let's see how you feel after breakfast, okay?" By 8 a.m., Zoe's breathing was better but not great. Seth called Mrs. Patterson, who agreed to watch her for the day. Then he stood in front of his closet, staring at the 3 dress shirts he owned. One still had blood stains from yesterday. The other 2 were worn thin at the collars, faded from too many washes. He chose the least terrible option and paired it with khakis that were starting to fray at the hem. In the bathroom mirror, he looked exactly like what he was, a man pretending to belong in a world where he'd never fit. The meeting was at 10. Seth dropped Zoe at Mrs. Patterson's at 9, promising he'd be back by noon. On the drive downtown, he rehearsed what he'd say. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm glad Miss Cole is recovering. I don't need any recognition. Keep it simple, gracious, brief." Meridian Tower dominated the skyline like a monument to everything Seth would never have. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with abstract art that probably cost more than his car. A security desk staffed by people in suits nicer than anything hanging in Seth's closet. He approached, feeling every eye on him. "Seth Newman, I have a meeting with Bailey Warren at Warren and Associates." The guard checked his computer, nodded once. 42nd floor, elevators on your right. No questions, no judgment in his expression, just smooth, professional courtesy. Seth felt like an imposter. The elevator was mirrored on 3 sides, forcing Seth to confront his reflection from every angle. His shirt collar was crooked. He fixed it, then noticed a loose thread on his sleeve. He tucked it under, but that made the cuff bunch awkwardly. By the time the elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor, he'd given up trying to look like he belonged. The reception area was designed to intimidate floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that was clearly expensive, paintings that might have been originals. A receptionist sat behind a curved glass desk, her makeup perfect, her smile professional. "Mr. Newman for Miss Warren," Seth said, and his voice came out rougher than intended. "Of course, she's expecting you, right this way." The hallway was lined with photos of the firm's partners' confident faces in expensive frames. The receptionist stopped at a corner office and knocked. "Come in," called a woman's voice. Bailey Warren stood as Seth entered. She was maybe 50, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and a handshake that could crack walnuts. "Mr. Newman, thank you for coming. Please, sit." The office was larger than Seth's living room, with windows on 2 walls and shelves lined with legal texts. Seth sat on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Can I get you anything?" Bailey asked. "Coffee? Water? I'm fine." Seth's hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. Bailey sat across from him, folding her hands on the desk. "I'll get right to it. Miss Cole would like to meet with you personally, but first, she wanted me to speak with you about the circumstances of yesterday's incident." Seth nodded, unsure where this was going. "You lost your job," Bailey said. "It wasn't a question. Your employer terminated you for missing an important presentation in order to render aid at the accident scene." Seth's jaw tightened. "How do you know that?" "Miss Cole asked me to look into the situation. She wanted to understand the full context of what happened." Bailey pulled a folder from her desk drawer. "What I found concerns her deeply, Mr. Newman." The folder sat between them like a accusation. Seth stared at it, feeling something cold settle in his chest. You investigated me. Miss Cole wanted to know who saved her life, Bailey said, her voice careful. And what we found was a man who sacrificed his career to do so. A man who is now facing significant financial hardship because of that choice. Seth stood abruptly. I didn't do it for recognition or compensation. I did it because someone needed help. Please sit down, Bailey said, but Seth was already moving toward the door. Thank Miss Cole for her concern, but I'm fine. I don't need charity from wealthy people who feel guilty. Mr. Newman, your daughter needs her asthma medication. Seth froze, hand on the doorknob. Bailey continued, her voice gentle now. Zoe, 8 years old, diagnosed with persistent asthma at age 4. She requires daily preventive medication that costs $240 per month out of pocket. You haven't filled her prescription in 6 weeks because you're waiting for insurance that no longer exists. Seth turned slowly. You had no right to look into my family. You're correct. And if you want to walk out that door right now, you can. But Miss Cole asked me to extend an invitation for you to meet with her this afternoon at 2 p.m. Whether or not you accept, she's arranged for a prescription to be filled and delivered to your address today, the medication your daughter needs. I can't accept that. Yes, you can, Bailey said firmly. A man who stops to save a stranger's life doesn't need to prove his integrity by letting his daughter suffer. Pride and principles are luxuries, Mr. Newman. Your daughter's health isn't. The words hit like a slap. Seth stood there, torn between anger at being investigated and the desperate knowledge that Bailey was right. Zoe needed that medication. He'd been lying to himself that he could wait, that her asthma was manageable without it. Why does she want to meet me? Seth asked finally. Because you saved her life, Bailey said simply. And because she believes you deserve better than what you've gotten. Will you meet with her? Seth looked out the window at the city spreading below. Somewhere out there. Zoe was at Mrs. Patterson's apartment, probably watching cartoons, breathing easier after this morning's treatment but vulnerable to the next attack. Somewhere out there was a pharmacy that would deliver medication he desperately needed and couldn't afford. Where? He asked. Bailey smiled. Her office. Here in Meridian Tower, 58th floor, 2 p.m. I'll have reception expecting you. Seth nodded, not trusting his voice. Mr. Newman, Bailey said as he turned to leave. For what it's worth, Miss Cole isn't doing this out of guilt. She's doing it because she believes the system that punished you for compassion is broken, and she wants to help fix it. Seth left without responding. In the elevator, he checked his phone. A text from an unknown number with a photo attached a prescription receipt from Patterson's pharmacy. Albuterol preventive inhaler, filled and ready for pickup. Paid in full. Below it, a message. For Zoe. No strings attached. See you at 2. Sabrina. Seth stared at the message until the elevator reached the lobby. Then he walked out into the morning sunlight, bought a coffee he couldn't afford from the shop next door, and sat on a bench trying to process what had just happened. Someone had investigated his entire life, knew about his job losses, his struggles, his daughter's medical needs. It should have felt invasive, violating even. But instead, Seth felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Seen. Someone had actually looked at his situation and understood it wasn't failure, it was survival. Someone had seen past the surface to recognize that every late arrival and early departure represented a choice between being a good employee and being a good father. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Patterson. Zoe's asking when you'll pick her up. She's doing okay, but I think she'd be more comfortable at home. Seth checked the time. 11:15. He had almost 3 hours until the meeting with Sabrina Cole. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he texted back. At Patterson's pharmacy, the prescription was waiting exactly as promised. The pharmacist handed it over without asking for payment, just a sympathetic smile. Someone really cares about your little girl. Seth held the paper bag like it contained gold. In a way, it did. It contained air, breathing, nights without emergency room visits. It contained the ability to be a father instead of a helpless observer of his daughter's suffering. He picked up Zoe from Mrs. Patterson's, got her settled at home with her coloring books and the new medication. Then he changed into a least-worn shirt and prepared to meet the woman who'd just given him something he couldn't possibly repay. Meridian Tower looked different at 1:45 p.m. The lunch crowd had cleared, leaving the lobby quieter, somehow more intimidating. Seth stood outside for 5 minutes, watching people enter and exit with the casual confidence of belonging. Young professionals in tailored suits, older executives with leather briefcases, everyone moving with purpose. He pulled out his phone, looked at Zoe's last text. "Feeling better. Mrs. P says you have another meeting. Good luck, Daddy." Seth pocketed the phone and walked through the revolving doors. The security guard from this morning recognized him. "Back for another meeting, Mr. Newman?" 58th floor. This time, Miss Cole's executive suite. The elevator ride felt longer than it should. Seth watched the numbers climb 30, 40, 50, each floor another level away from the world he knew. At 58, the doors opened onto something that looked more like a luxury hotel than an office. The reception area had windows on 3 sides, offering a panoramic view of the city. Real artwork hung on the walls, not prints, but actual paintings with visible brushstrokes. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive materials. A receptionist sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Seth's car. "Mr. Newman," she said, smiling warmly, "Miss Cole is expecting you. Would you like anything to drink? Water? Coffee? Tea?" Water would be great. His throat felt like sandpaper. She poured water from a glass pitcher with cucumber slices floating in it, handed him a crystal glass. "Right this way." The hallway to Sabrina's office was lined with photographs, Meridian construction projects, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, awards presentations. In several photos, Seth recognized Sabrina Cole. Younger in some, always composed, always in control. The receptionist stopped at a set of double doors. "Go ahead in." Seth knocked, heard a voice call, "Come in," and entered. The office was absurd, easily 1,000 square feet, with windows on 2 walls offering views that made his breath catch. A sitting area with couches that could seat 8 people. A desk the size of a small car. Abstract sculptures on pedestals. But Seth barely noticed the luxury because his attention locked on the woman standing by the windows. Sabrina Cole turned to face him. In the accident, covered in blood, she'd been terrifying in her vulnerability. Now, in a charcoal suit with her dark hair pulled back, she radiated power, but it was her eyes that caught him, sharp and assessing, but also tired. This was someone who carried weight. "Mr. Newman," she said, crossing the room with her hand extended. "Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm but brief. Up close, Seth could see the bandage above her eyebrow, where his tie had pressed against the wound. A reminder that this powerful woman had been dying on the side of a highway 24 hours ago. "Miss Cole," Seth managed, "I'm glad you're recovering. Please, sit." She gestured to the sitting area. Seth sat on the edge of a couch that probably cost more than 6 months of his rent. Sabrina sat across from him, her posture perfect. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sabrina leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to meet you in person to say something that can't be adequately expressed over email or through lawyers. You saved my life yesterday, Mr. Newman. While other people drove past, you stopped. You held pressure on my wound until the paramedics arrived. According to the emergency room doctor, I would have lost consciousness within 3 minutes and bled out within 8. You gave me back my life." Seth shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same thing." "That's factually incorrect," Sabrina said, something sharp in her voice now. "Traffic camera footage shows 11 cars past the accident before you stopped. 11 people who decided their morning was more important. You didn't. You stopped, provided aid, and you did it knowing you'd lose your job. Seth looked away. You talked to Bailey Warren. I did. And Mr. Newman. Seth, I need you to understand something. She stood, walked to the windows. I built this company from nothing, started with a $50,000 loan and a business plan no one believed in. 20 years later, I employ 4,000 people. I've made money, created jobs, told myself that what I was doing mattered. She turned back to face him. Yesterday, I almost died because I was distracted on my phone, checking emails about a merger that suddenly seems monumentally unimportant, and the person who saved me lost everything: his job, his insurance, his financial security, because the system I participated in building, the corporate culture that prioritizes productivity over humanity, punished him for being a decent human being. Seth's hands tightened on his knees. You didn't fire me. My boss did. Your boss works in this industry, this culture, the culture that says reliability matters more than compassion. That being on time for a meeting is more important than stopping for someone bleeding out on the highway. She returned to her chair. I can't change what happened, but I can try to make it right. Seth felt something cold in his chest. What are you offering? Sabrina pulled a folder from the side table, slid it across to him. Bailey compiled this. I want you to look at it. Seth opened the folder. Inside was information about his life, laid out in neat bullet points like evidence. Seth Newman, age 41. Daughter Zoe, age 8. Chronic asthma requiring daily medication and regular monitoring. Wife Sarah, left 2 years ago, current location unknown. Employment history: 6 jobs in 3 years. Most recent termination yesterday for rendering medical aid instead of attending scheduled meeting. Financial snapshot: $2,400 in savings. Rent $1,650, due in 6 days. Monthly medications for daughter: $240, without insurance. After school care: $400 starting next month. Current financial trajectory: eviction in 6 to 8 weeks. Seth's vision blurred. Seeing it written out like that, clinical and precise, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Why did you need to know all this? Because I wanted to understand who you are, Sabrina said. What I found was a man with a business degree who should be in management but has been stuck in entry-level positions because every employer sees single father with sick daughter and hears liability. A man who's been doing everything right and getting punished for it. Seth closed the folder, unable to look at it anymore. What do you want from me? I want to offer you a job. Seth's head snapped up. Sabrina continued. Operations Director for Meridian's new Community Outreach Division. We're launching an initiative to support working families, provide resources for single parents, create a model for corporate responsibility. Starting salary $95,000 per year, full benefits, including comprehensive health insurance for you and Zoe. Effective immediately. The numbers didn't make sense. Seth had never made more than $48,000 in his life. Why would you do this? Because you're qualified. Bachelor's degree in business management. 8 years of experience in operations and analytics. You've been overqualified for every position you've worked. I was unreliable, Seth said, his voice rough. Late all the time, left early, missed meetings. Sabrina's expression hardened. You were a single father managing a chronically ill daughter with no support system and poverty wages. That's not unreliable. That's surviving an impossible situation. And the fact that you kept showing up at all demonstrates more resilience than anything I've ever done. Seth stood abruptly. I can't accept this. It's charity. You feel guilty, and you're trying to. Sit down, Mr. Newman. The command in her voice made him freeze. Sabrina stood as well. And despite being several inches shorter, she suddenly seemed taller. This is not charity, she said, her voice ice. This is recognition, that the system is broken. That good people are being discarded because corporations value efficiency over humanity. You lost your job for doing the right thing. I'm offering you a better one because you deserve it. Because I can either feel guilty and do nothing, or I can actually try to fix what's broken. Seth's jaw worked. You don't know me. You don't know if I'd even be good at this job. I know you risked everything to save a stranger, Sabrina said. I know you've been fighting impossible odds for 8 years and haven't quit. I know every reference I called from your previous jobs said the same thing. Hardworking, detail-oriented, would rehire in a second if circumstances were different. That tells me everything I need to know. She walked to her desk, pulled out another paper. Your former boss, Gerald Hoffman. I made some calls. Turns out he's been filtering talented people out of advancement opportunities for years, keeping positions filled with employees who won't challenge him. He was terminated this morning. Seth felt the world tilt. You got him fired? I didn't have to. Once HR reviewed his management practices, the decision made itself. The corporate culture that punished you has consequences now. She returned to stand in front of him. This isn't about guilt or charity, Seth. It's about building something better. And I need someone who actually understands what it's like to be on the other side of corporate indifference. Seth sank back onto the couch, his mind reeling. $95,000. Health insurance. A job where being a father wouldn't be seen as a liability. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. I need to think about it, he heard himself say. Sabrina nodded. I understand. But Seth, your daughter needs to see a doctor. Asthma that's severe requires monitoring. I've arranged for Dr. Patricia Mitchell, one of the best pediatric pulmonologists in the place. State to see Zoe tomorrow morning at 9. Whether or not you accept the job, that appointment is yours. Seth's throat closed. I can't. You can, Sabrina interrupted. Accepting help isn't weakness. It's acknowledging that no one survives alone. She walked him to the door. The appointment information will be sent to your phone. Think about the job offer. But please, get your daughter proper care. Seth left in a daze. In the elevator, he pulled out his phone and found a text from an unknown number. Dr. Patricia Mitchell, Thornhill Medical Center, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Address attached. No copay, no deductible, all covered. He stared at the message until the elevator reached the lobby. Then he walked out into the afternoon sun, climbed into his car, and drove 3 blocks before pulling over because his hands were shaking too hard to drive. Someone had seen him. Really seen him, not as a liability or a charity case, but as someone with value. Seth dropped his forehead against the steering wheel, and for the first time in 3 years, let himself cry. Seth sat in his parked car for 20 minutes, trying to compose himself enough to drive. His phone kept buzzing. Mrs. Patterson checking in, a reminder about bills, a notification that his car insurance would lapse in 3 days. The real world pressing back in, demanding attention. He drove home on autopilot, his mind circling the same impossible thought. $95,000 a year. He'd spent 8 years, never making more than $48,000. The jump felt impossible, like someone had made a calculation error. At home, Zoe was at the kitchen table with her art supplies spread everywhere. Daddy, look what I made. She held up a drawing of 2 figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a rainbow. It's us, and we're happy. Seth pulled her into a hug, holding on longer than necessary. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Mrs. Patterson said you had an important meeting. Did it go good? It went well. Seth corrected, automatically. And yeah, it was interesting. Are you going to get a new job? Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. Maybe. We'll see. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Seth pulled out his laptop and did what he always did when something seemed too good to be true. He researched. Sabrina Cole had a Wikipedia page. Born in poverty, mother died when she was 12, raised by a grandmother who cleaned houses, worked her way through community college, then state university, started Meridian Enterprises at 23 with a small business loan, grew it into $1 billion company over 2 decades. The articles called her brilliant, ruthless, demanding, but they also mentioned her philanthropy scholarship funds for low-income students, grants for small businesses, investments in affordable housing. She'd built an empire, but she'd done it while trying to pull others up with her. Seth closed the laptop. 11 p.m. He should sleep, but his mind wouldn't stop. His phone rang. Unknown number. Seth almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Seth. It's Sabrina. I hope I'm not calling too late. Seth sat up straighter, as if she could see him through the phone. No, I was awake. I wanted to follow up on today. I realize I came on strong, and I apologize if I made you uncomfortable. You offered me a job that pays twice what I've ever made. Uncomfortable doesn't quite cover it. A pause. Then Sabrina said, "Can I be completely honest with you? Please." Yesterday, when I woke up in the hospital, the first thing I thought about was a conference call I'd missed. A billion-dollar deal that suddenly seemed meaningless. Then they told me someone had saved my life, and that person had lost his job doing it. And I realized that everything I'd built, the company, the success, the reputation, all of it, was predicated on a system that throws away people like you. She took a breath. I don't sleep well anymore, Seth. Haven't for years. Too much to do, too many people depending on me. But last night, I slept 8 hours straight. First time in a decade, because I'd spent the day trying to fix something that was broken. Does that make sense? I think so. This isn't about charity. It's about me recognizing that I've been part of a problem and wanting to be part of the solution. You're not a project or a feel-good story. You're someone who should have had opportunities years ago and didn't, because the system is rigged against people in your situation. Seth gripped the phone. I don't know if I can do this job. I've never managed anything bigger than a data entry team. Then you'll learn. I'll make sure you have support, training, resources. But Seth, I didn't get where I am by playing it safe. I took risks on people who were hungry and smart and willing to work. You're all three. My daughter needs me. The job has flexible hours. Work from home when you need to. Bring Zoe to the office if necessary. We'll make it work. Seth closed his eyes. Why me? You could hire someone with experience. Someone who wouldn't need training. Because experience doesn't mean empathy. I need someone who understands what it's like to choose between medicine and rent. Someone who knows what it means to be invisible to the system. That's not something I can hire from a resume. Silence stretched between them. Then Seth said, Zoe had an asthma attack this morning. Bad one. If I'd had the preventive medication you sent, it might not have happened. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just understand that when you're offering me this job, you're not just changing my life. You're changing hers too. And if I fail, if I can't do what you need me to do, it's not just me who pays the price. You won't fail, Sabrina said with absolute certainty. Because I won't let you. After they hung up, Seth sat in the dark for a long time. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up his bank account one more time. $2,400. Rent due in 5 days. 6 weeks until complete financial collapse. He opened a new email and typed, Miss Cole, I accept the position. When do I start? Seth Newman. The response came within 2 minutes. Monday, 9 a.m. HR. We'll have everything ready. And Seth. Thank you. This is going to be good. Seth closed his laptop and walked to Zoe's side of the apartment. She was asleep, breathing easier with the new medication. Her walls were covered in drawings of families and rainbows and happy endings. Maybe, for once, the happy ending was real. The next morning, Seth woke to his alarm at 7 a.m. The appointment with Dr. Mitchell was at 9. He got Zoe up, fed her breakfast, and tried to calm the nervous energy vibrating through him. "Where are we going?" Zoe asked in the car. "To see a new doctor, a specialist who knows all about asthma." "Is it expensive?" The question broke his heart. 8 years old, and she already knew to worry about money. "It's covered, sweetheart. Don't worry." Thornhill Medical Center was nothing like the clinics they'd haunted for years. The building was new, the parking lot clean, the lobby bright with natural light. A receptionist greeted them by name, handed Zoe a tablet loaded with games, offered Seth coffee that actually tasted good. 10 minutes later, they were called back. Dr. Patricia Mitchell was maybe 60. With silver hair and kind eyes, she spent 40 minutes with Zoe listening to her lungs, asking about triggers, reviewing her medical history with a depth no doctor had ever bothered with before. Finally, she turned to Seth. "Zoe's asthma is moderate persistent, which means it requires daily management. The preventive inhaler she's on now is good, but I'd like to add a long-term control medication, and I want to see her every 3 months to monitor her lung function." "That sounds expensive," Seth said carefully. "Doctor," Mitchell smiled, "your insurance covers it completely." Sabrina made sure of that. "Your insurance," present tense, as if it already existed. "I don't officially start the job until Monday." "Your benefits are active as of yesterday, doctor," Mitchell said. Sabrina handled it personally. Seth felt his throat tighten. She didn't have to do that. She did it anyway. "Doctor," Mitchell handed him 3 prescriptions. "Fill these today. The pharmacy downstairs is in network. No copay. And Seth, your daughter is going to be fine. With proper management, kids with asthma live completely normal lives." Normal lives. The words felt foreign. In the pharmacy, waiting for the prescriptions, Zoe looked up at him. "Daddy, are you crying again?" Seth wiped at his eyes. "Happy tears this time, baby." "Because of the new doctor? Because things are going to get better?" Zoe considered this. "Is it because of the lady you helped?" Smart kid. "Yeah. Partly. Mrs. Patterson says, when you help people, good things come back to you." Seth pulled her close. "Mrs. Patterson is very wise." That evening, Seth's phone rang. Sabrina again. "How was the appointment?" "Life-changing," Seth said honestly. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough." "Then don't thank me. Just show up Monday ready to work. We've got a lot to do." "I will." "Sabrina, why are you doing this? Really?" A pause. Then she said, "Because 20 years ago, someone gave me a chance I didn't deserve. Lent me $50,000 when every bank turned me down. I asked him why, and he said because someone had done it for him. It's not charity, Seth, it's paying forward, and now you'll do it for someone else." After they hung up, Seth looked at the prescriptions lined up on the counter, at his daughter sleeping peacefully, at the future that had looked so bleak yesterday and now seemed full of possibility. On his laptop, he opened the email from Meridian HR. Benefits package, salary details, start date. It was all real. Seth Newman had stopped to help a stranger, lost everything, and somehow found something better. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy Seth hadn't felt since his first day of college. He stood in front of his closet at 6 a.m., staring at clothes that suddenly seemed inadequate. Everything he owned looked worn, faded, the wardrobe of someone who'd been surviving instead of living. Zoe appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school. "You look scared, Daddy." "Just nervous," Seth admitted. "Big day. You'll be great." She said it with such absolute certainty that Seth almost believed it. He dropped Zoe at school, her new school, the one near Meridian Tower with the after-school program that was somehow already arranged and paid for, and drove to the parking garage beneath the tower. The security guard waved him through to the employee section. "Welcome to Meridian, Mr. Newman." Employee section. Not visitor parking. He belonged here now. The HR office was on the 15th floor. bright and efficient. A woman named Kendall Myers greeted him with a warm smile and a folder thick with paperwork. "We'll get you all set up. Badge, parking pass, benefits enrollment, direct deposit. Should take about an hour." The benefits package made Seth's eyes water. Health insurance with zero deductible. Vision and dental included. Life insurance. Disability coverage. A 401k with company matching. Things he'd only read about in articles about good jobs that always seemed to go to other people. "This is for both me and my daughter?" Seth asked, just to be sure. "Correct. Zoe is fully covered, including all prescriptions and specialist visits." Kendall handed him another form. Sabrina also set up an HSA with $5,000 already deposited. "That's for any medical expenses not covered by insurance, though honestly, your plan covers almost everything." Seth stared at the number. $5,000. Just there. Available. By 10 a.m., he had a badge with his photo, access cards, a company laptop, and directions to his new office on the 34th floor. The elevator ride up felt surreal. Other employees nodded at him, made small talk about the weather. Seth tried to look like he belonged. The 34th floor housed the Community Outreach Division, brand new, Kendall had explained. Seth's office was modest compared to Sabrina's, but it had windows. Real windows with natural light. A desk that wasn't falling apart. A chair that didn't squeak. On the desk sat a note in handwriting he recognized from text messages. "Welcome to Meridian. Let's build something that matters. Staff meeting at 11 inches conference room CS." The staff meeting included 12 people. A mix of HR specialists, community organizers, and program coordinators. Sabrina stood at the head of the table, commanding attention without effort. "Most of you know why we're here," she began. "Meridian has been successful because we've focused on efficiency and profit, but we've also contributed to a system that treats people as expendable. That changes now. This division exists to support working families, provide resources for single parents, create pathways for people who've been locked out of opportunity." She looked directly at Seth. "Seth Newman is our new operations director. He brings first-hand experience with the exact challenges we're trying to address. His perspective will be invaluable as we build this program." After the meeting, a woman approached Seth. "Fiona Brooks, head of program development. I'm excited to work with you. We need someone who actually understands what families are dealing with." "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do yet," Seth admitted. Fiona smiled. "None of us are. That's the exciting part. We get to figure it out together." The first week passed in a blur of meetings and planning sessions. Seth discovered that his years of juggling impossible schedules had given him skills he didn't know he had: logistics, coordination, resource allocation, crisis management. Things he'd been doing for himself and Zoe translated directly to program development. By Friday, he'd helped design a pilot program for emergency childcare subsidies. By the end of the second week, they'd launched a resource center for employees facing financial hardship. Small steps, but real ones. Zoe thrived with the stability. Her asthma attacks decreased with proper medication and regular monitoring. She made friends at the new after-school program, came home with stories about art projects and playground games. The fear that had lived in her eyes, the constant worry about money and moving, and whether they'd be okay, gradually faded. 3 weeks into the job, Sabrina called Seth to her office. "How are you settling in?" "Good. Really good. The team is incredible. They say the same about you." Sabrina handed him a document. "I want your opinion on this proposal. We're considering partnering with the city to provide job training for unemployed parents. What do you think?" Seth read through it carefully. The proposal was solid, but something nagged at him. "Can I be honest?" "Always. Job training is important, but it doesn't address the immediate crisis. When I was unemployed, I didn't need classes on resume writing. I needed to feed my daughter. This program wouldn't have helped me in the moment I needed it most. Sabrina leaned back in her chair. What would have helped? Emergency funds, direct financial assistance to cover rent, and food, while people look for work. Job training is long-term investment, but people need short-term survival first. That's expensive. So is the cost of families becoming homeless. Seth felt his confidence growing. If we're serious about helping, we need to meet people where they are, not where we wish they were. Sabrina was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. This is exactly why I hired you. Draft a proposal for an emergency assistance fund. Present it to the board next month. Seth left her office feeling something he hadn't experienced in years. Valued. Not just for showing up and doing what he was told, but for thinking and contributing and being heard. That evening, he picked up Zoe from after-school care. She ran to him with a drawing. Look, we learned about families today. I drew ours. The picture showed two figures, one tall, one small standing, in front of a building labeled, "Where Daddy Works." Both figures were smiling. It's perfect, Seth said, and meant it. 6 weeks into the job, Sabrina invited Seth and Zoe to dinner at her home. The invitation came via text on a Thursday afternoon. My daughter Bailey keeps asking about the man who saved her mom. Would you and Zoe like to come for dinner Saturday? Nothing formal, just family. S. Seth stared at the message. He'd seen Sabrina almost daily at work, but always in professional settings. This felt different. Personal. He typed back, "We'd love to. What can we bring?" The response was immediate. "Just yourselves. 6 p.m. Address below." Saturday evening, Seth drove to an address in Maple Heights, an older neighborhood with tree-lined streets and historic homes. He'd expected something massive and intimidating. Instead, Sabrina's house was a restored Victorian beautiful but not ostentatious, with a porch swing and flower boxes in the windows. Before Seth could knock, the door flew open. A girl about Zoe's age stood there, dark curls bouncing. "You're Mr. Newman. And you must be Zoe. I'm Bailey. Come in. Come in." The interior was warm and lived in. Family photos on the walls, books stacked on tables, a cat sleeping on the couch. It looked like a home, not a showcase. Sabrina appeared from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a sweater. Seth had never seen her in casual clothes. She looked younger, more relaxed. "Welcome. I hope you're hungry. I made way too much food." Bailey grabbed Zoe's hand. "Want to see my room? I have a dinosaur collection." The girls disappeared upstairs, leaving Seth and Sabrina alone. "Thank you for coming," Sabrina said. "Bailey's been asking for weeks. She wanted to meet the man who helped her mom. I'm glad she's doing well." They moved to the kitchen, where something smelled incredible. Sabrina stirred a pot on the stove. "I should confess, I'm not a great cook. This is mostly takeout from the Cas, Italian place down the street, transferred to my own pots to look impressive." Seth laughed, surprised by her honesty. "Your secret is safe with me." Over dinner, which was delicious regardless of its source, Seth watched Sabrina with her daughter. The powerful CEO disappeared, replaced by a mother who listened patiently to stories about school and friends and a science project on volcanoes. Bailey was smart and funny, with her mother's sharp eyes and quick mind. "Mr. Newman saved your life?" Bailey asked her mother. "He did. I was scared and hurt, and he stopped to help when other people didn't." Bailey looked at Seth with serious eyes. "Thank you for saving my mom. I don't know what I'd do without her." Seth's throat tightened. "I'm glad I was there." After dinner, the girls went back upstairs to play. Sabrina poured wine, led Seth to the living room. "Can I ask you something personal?" Seth said. "Of course. Why do you live here?" "I expected something bigger. More what a billionaire's home should look like." Sabrina smiled. I grew up in a house smaller than this, with my grandmother and 3 cousins. When I made money, I bought the biggest house I could find. Spent a year feeling isolated and miserable. This house reminded me of where I came from. It felt like home. She curled into the corner of the couch. Money doesn't change who you are fundamentally, Seth. It just amplifies it. If you're generous, you become more generous. If you're lonely, you become more lonely. I had to figure out who I wanted to be. Who did you decide to be? Someone who remembered where she came from, who didn't forget what it felt like to count pennies and skip meals. She looked at him. What about you? What kind of person are you? Seth considered the question. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. For years, I've just been in survival mode. Being a father, keeping Zoe alive, trying not to drown. I never had space to think about who I was beyond that. And now I'm starting to see that maybe I'm more than just a guy barely holding on. Maybe I actually have something to contribute. Sabrina's expression softened. You always did. The world just didn't give you room to show it. They talked for hours. About building the outreach program, about the challenges of balancing work and parenthood, about the guilt that came with having resources when so many didn't. Seth found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone, the fear that Zoe would grow up resenting him, the shame of losing jobs, the nights he'd cried in the bathroom so his daughter wouldn't hear. Sabrina listened without judgment, shared her own struggles. The venture capitalist who'd told her she'd never succeed because she was a woman. The years of working 18-hour days to prove herself. The loneliness of being at the top with no one who understood. I almost gave up once, she admitted. 10 years ago, when Bailey was little. The business was struggling. I was exhausted, and Bailey asked why I was never home. I came this close to selling everything and walking away. What stopped you? My grandmother. She'd raised me after my mother died, worked as a housekeeper for 30 years. On her deathbed, she told me not to waste the opportunities she'd sacrificed to give me. So I kept going, built the company into something bigger. But I also made sure I was there for Bailey. Some nights I'd work from her bedroom floor while she slept, just so she knew I was present. Seth understood that completely. I used to bring work to Zoe's hospital room during her asthma episodes, type emails on my phone while she slept. We do what we have to, Sabrina said. But it shouldn't be that hard. That's why this program matters, so other parents don't have to choose. Later, when Seth and Zoe were leaving, Bailey hugged Zoe goodbye like they'd been friends for years. Can we do this again? Definitely, Sabrina said. She looked at Seth. If that's okay with you? More than okay. In the car, Zoe chattered about Bailey's dinosaur collection and the cat and how nice the house was. Seth drove home feeling something he hadn't felt in years, connection, not just professional respect, but genuine friendship with someone who understood the weight of responsibility. His phone buzzed at a red light. Sabrina, thank you for tonight. Bailey hasn't stopped talking about how cool Zoe is. We should make this a regular thing. Seth smiled and typed back one-handed. Name the date. Over the following months, those dinners became tradition. Every few weeks, the 4 of them would gather, sometimes at Sabrina's house, sometimes at Seth's apartment, which no longer felt embarrassingly small, but instead felt like home. The girls became inseparable. Seth and Sabrina became something more than boss and employee, more than friends even. They became partners in the truest sense, building both the outreach program and a life that neither had expected. At work, the transformation continued. The emergency assistance fund Seth had proposed passed the board vote unanimously. They helped 47 families in the first 3 months. Former employees who'd been fired for circumstances beyond their control were quietly rehired. Workplace policies shifted to accommodate parents and caregivers. And slowly, Meridian stopped being just a company focused on profit. It became something better. 8 months after the accident, Meridian held its annual company-wide meeting. 5,000 employees gathered in the convention center downtown to hear Sabrina's address. Seth stood backstage, more nervous than he'd been on his first day. "You ready?" Sabrina asked, adjusting his tie. "To speak in front of 5,000 people?" "Absolutely not." She smiled. "Just tell the truth. That's all anyone wants to hear." Sabrina took the stage first, commanding the room's attention effortlessly. "A year ago, I nearly died in a car accident. While bleeding out on the side of a highway, I was passed by 11 cars. 11 people who decided I wasn't worth their time. Then a man named Seth Newman stopped." She gestured for Seth to join her. His legs felt unsteady as he walked into the spotlight. Seth was on his way to a crucial presentation. Missing it meant losing his job. He stopped anyway. "He saved my life, and for that, he was fired. When I learned this, I realized something had to change. The corporate culture that punished compassion needed to be rebuilt." She turned to Seth. "Tell them what we've built." Seth stepped up to the microphone, looking out at thousands of faces. 8 months ago, I was unemployed and about to lose my apartment. I'd spent years being told I was unreliable, expendable, not worth investing in. But the truth was simpler. I was drowning in a system that didn't care whether I survived. His voice grew stronger. "Since then, we've created programs that helped hundreds of families. Emergency assistance funds that kept people housed. Child care subsidies that let parents work without panic. Flexible policies that treat employees like humans instead of machines. This isn't charity. It's recognizing that when we support each other, everyone succeeds." The applause started small, then built until the entire room was standing. After the presentation, employees approached Seth with their own stories. A single mother who'd used the emergency fund to pay for car repairs so she could keep her job. A father whose flexible schedule let him care for his aging parent. A woman who'd been on the verge of quitting but stayed because Meridian finally saw her as a whole person, not just a worker. That evening, Sabrina invited Seth and Zoe to dinner again. But this time, when they arrived, she had something to say. They sat on her porch as the girls played in the backyard. Sabrina's hands wrapped around a wine glass, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about something for months," she said finally. "About us." Seth's heart rate picked up. "What about us?" "We work well together. The girls are best friends. We have dinner twice a week. You're the first person I call when something happens." She looked at him. "Seth, I think we've been building something here. Something more than friendship." Seth had known this was coming. Had felt it growing for months, but hadn't wanted to name it. "I've felt it too," he admitted. "But Sabrina, you're still my boss. The power dynamic is something we'll navigate carefully." She interrupted. "I'm not asking you to rush into anything. I'm just saying that when I imagine my future, you're in it. You and Zoe both." Seth set down his own glass. "When Sarah left, I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone get close enough to hurt Zoe again. But you've been there for her in ways I never expected. She trusts you. I trust you. So what do? We take it slow. Let the girls see us together more. Make sure this is real and not just gratitude or circumstance." Seth reached for her hand. "But yeah, I want to see where this goes." Sabrina squeezed his hand. "Me too." They told the girls a month later over pizza in Sabrina's living room. Both Zoe and Bailey reacted with enthusiastic approval. "Does this mean we're going to be sisters?" Bailey asked. "Eventually. Maybe," Sabrina said carefully. "But first, we're just going to spend more time together as a family." "We're already a family," Zoe declared with 8-year-old certainty. And somehow, it was that simple. 6 months later, Seth stood in Sabrina's office after everyone else had left for the day. She was reviewing proposals, glasses perched on her nose, looking both formidable and adorable. "Move in with us," she said without looking up from her papers. Seth blinked. What? You and Zoe. Move into the house. We're there every weekend anyway. The girls want bunk beds. I want to wake up with you every morning. Now she looked up, smiling. What do you say? Seth crossed the room, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her. Yes, he said against her lips. Absolutely yes. They told the girls that weekend. The reaction was immediate and joyful, both of them shrieking and jumping and immediately making plans for how to decorate their shared room. Moving day was organized chaos. Mrs. Patterson came to say goodbye, tears in her eyes. I knew good things would come for you, she told Seth. I just knew it. In the new shared room, Zoe and Bailey hung their artwork side by side, pictures of families and dinosaurs and happy endings. Seth stood in the doorway with Sabrina, watching their daughters laugh together. Are you happy? Sabrina asked quietly. Seth pulled her close. I didn't know I could be this happy. That night, with the girls finally asleep and boxes still unpacked everywhere, Seth and Sabrina sat on the porch swing. The same swing where he'd first arrived for dinner 8 months ago, nervous and out of place. Thank you, Seth said. For what? For seeing me. For giving me a chance when no one else would. Sabrina shook her head. You gave yourself the chance when you stopped on that highway. I just recognized what was already there. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. Somewhere in the house, a cat meowed. In the shared bedroom, giggles erupted, then quieted. This was home. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and solid and theirs. Seth Newman had lost everything for stopping to help a stranger. In return, he'd found a family, a purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help when it's offered. And that was worth more than anything he'd lost. 2 years after the accident, Seth stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. His hands were shaking not from fear, but from anticipation. Daddy, you look nervous again, Zoe said from the doorway. She was 10 now, taller, her asthma so well managed that she'd joined the school track team. The scared little girl who'd worried about money and moving had transformed into a confident kid who believed the world was full of possibility. Big day, Seth said, echoing what he'd told her 2 years ago before his first day at Meridian. You'll be great. Zoe replied with the same certainty she'd had then. Today was the opening ceremony for the Newman Cole Family Resource Center, a facility that had taken 18 months to build and represented everything Seth and Sabrina had been working toward. A place where struggling families could access emergency funds, job training, childcare services, and mental health support. All free, all without judgment. The ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9:30, the parking lot was already full. Seth stood at the entrance with Sabrina, watching families arrive. Parents who looked like he'd looked 2 years ago, exhausted, worried, barely holding on. Now they were walking into a building designed specifically to catch them before they fell. We did this, Sabrina said quietly, her hand finding his. You did this, Seth corrected. I just helped. We did this together, she insisted. That's how it works now. The ceremony was simple. Local officials gave speeches about community investment. Board members from Meridian talked about corporate responsibility. Then Sabrina took the microphone. 2 years ago, a man named Seth Newman saved my life. He lost his job doing it because our system punished compassion. Today, we're opening a center that ensures no one else has to make that choice. This building represents a simple truth. We're stronger when we help each other. She gestured for Seth to join her at the ribbon. Together, they cut the ribbon together while cameras flashed and the crowd applauded. Inside, staff members were already greeting the first families, taking information, making appointments. A woman with 2 young kids stood in the lobby, looking overwhelmed. Seth approached her. Hi, I'm Seth Newman. Can I help you find what you need? The woman's eyes filled with tears. I just lost my job. I have rent due in 3 days and no idea how to pay it. Someone told me you might be able to help. Seth walked her to the emergency assistance desk, stayed, while the counselor worked through her situation. 20 minutes later, she had a check to cover rent and an appointment with a job placement specialist. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Seth before leaving. "Why help strangers?" "Because someone helped me when I needed it most," Seth said simply. "Now it's my turn to pass it forward." By the end of the day, they'd served 43 families. Within the first month, that number would grow to over 200. Within 6 months, the model would be replicated in 3 other cities. That evening, the 4 of them, Seth, Sabrina, Zoe, and Bailey, sat around the dinner table in the house they now all shared. It was taco night, which had become their tradition. The girls were talking over each other, excited about the day, about school, about the sleepover they were planning for the weekend. "Girls," Sabrina said, "I want to talk to you about something." Both went quiet, sensing the seriousness in her tone. Sabrina looked at Seth, then back at the girls. "Seth and I have been talking about our family, about making it official." Bailey's eyes went wide. "Are you getting married?" "We're thinking about it," Seth said, "but we wanted to know how you both felt first." "Yes," both girls shouted simultaneously, then dissolved into giggles. "That's a yes?" Sabrina asked, laughing. "Obviously," Zoe said, with 10-year-old exasperation. "We've been waiting forever." Later, after the girls were asleep, Seth and Sabrina sat on the porch swing, watching the neighborhood settle into night. 2 years ago, Seth had sat in his car covered in blood, watching his career disappear. Now he sat with the woman he loved, in a home filled with laughter, having spent the day helping people who reminded him of who he used to be. "Do you ever think about that morning?" Sabrina asked. "On the highway?" "Every day," Seth admitted. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd kept driving." "You wouldn't have," Sabrina said with certainty. "That's not who you are." "No," Seth agreed. "But I think about the 11 cars that did keep driving. I used to judge them. Now, I just feel sad for them. They'll never know what they missed." Sabrina rested her head on his shoulder. What did they miss? This connection, purpose, the knowledge that helping someone else can save you both. 6 months later, they got married in the backyard with 50 people in attendance. Zoe and Bailey served as joint maids of honor, wearing matching dresses they'd picked out together. Mrs. Patterson flew in from Florida, crying through the entire ceremony. The Meridian team filled half the seats, celebrating not just a wedding, but the proof that good things could happen to good people. During the reception, Bailey asked Seth to tell the story again. The story of how he'd met their mom. Seth pulled both girls close. "I was on my way to a meeting. I saw an accident. Your mom was hurt, and I stopped to help. And you lost your job," Zoe added. She'd heard this story dozens of times. "I did. But then your mom offered me a better one. And then we became friends. And then we fell in love. And then we became a family. The best kind of family," Bailey said. "The kind where everyone helps each other." Later, in the quiet moments before sleep, Sabrina asked Seth the question she'd asked before. "Are you happy?" Seth thought about the scared, desperate man he'd been. About the years of feeling invisible and worthless. About the moment he'd chosen to stop instead of drive past. About everything that had come after the job, the program, the family, the purpose. "I'm more than happy," he said. "I'm home." And that was the truth. Seth Newman had been drowning, and someone had thrown him a lifeline. But more than that, he'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was the bravest thing he'd ever done. That being seen, truly seen, was worth more than pride or independence. The accident had cost him everything, but in losing everything, he'd found what actually mattered: connection, purpose, love, and the knowledge that his life had value beyond what any job title could provide. Sabrina had saved him by offering opportunity. But he'd saved himself by having the courage to accept it. That was the real story. The one worth telling. The one they'd spend the rest of their lives proving to other families who needed to hear it. You're not alone. You matter. Help is not weakness. And sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually the beginning of your best one. That truth was worth everything Seth had lost, and more than everything he'd gained. It was worth stopping for. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.